第二個項目。
Next item. 765CL PWSC paper number 21 about the Anderson Road quarry site. The members are invited to recommend to the FC the upgrading of the works to category A at an estimated cost of 2654.4 million in MOD prices, and the government consulted the development panel on the relevant works on the 28th of March and the 25th of April 2017. The deliberations of the panel are tabled. We have attending this item from the administration Mr. Lam Sai-hung, Director of Civil Engineering and Development, Mr. Michael Leung, Deputy Project Engineering CEDD, Mr. Stephen Lee, Chief Engineer, New Territories East Development Office of the CEDD, and Ms. Jessie Kwan, Senior Town Planner of the Planning Department. Those who would like to ask questions, please press the button. Mr. Ray Chen. Thank you. Paragraph 7 of the paper suggests that the ARQ site will provide about 12 hectares of land for development of about 9,400 private and subsidized housing flats for a planned population of about 25,000. In Carrie Lam's policy address, it is also said that 1,000 flats would be used as starter homes. Can you tell us very clearly today what is the estimated ratio of private to starter home flats to, say, public and HOS flats? What will be the mix? After introducing the starter home scheme, what about the planned population? Would it be affected? Who will take the question? Deputy Secretary Ms. Ho. Or PAS, Ms. Ho. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. About the ARQ site, Anderson Road Quarry site, it should provide about 9,400 flats, according to the paragraph you cited. We originally would like to have the ratio of 2 to 8 in relation to private to public housing flats, discounting the 1,000 starter home flats suggested in the policy address. I do not have the concrete figures now, but if we have 1,000 more towards public housing, then I believe the ratio is about 20+% to 70+%. So altogether, there will be 9,400. That will be the base figure. Yes. So the base figure remains the same. The mix will be adjusted. Right. Let me also supplement that for the site for starter home flats is originally planned for private housing. We're just allocating 1,000 flats as starter home flats. What about subsidized housing flats? Do you have a mix of public rental housing and HOS? Now, on subsidized housing flats, as I mentioned just now, if we're talking about a 2 to 8 ratio, with 2 being public housing, the original idea is that 80% should be HOS or subsidized sale flats. Now, members may wonder why we have the 2 to 8 ratio with much fewer supply of public rental housing. Then I think we should not just confine to the ARQ site. We should look at the site at a broader perspective, together with the on-tat estate and other housing estates nearby. After population intake, on the whole, the mix would be 7 to 3, with 7 being public housing and 3 being private housing, because we have on-tat estate, on-tai estate, etc. in the surrounding, all being public rental housing estates. And on-tai estate is just one street away from the ARQ site in the paper. So can you tell us by giving us more information in a supplementary paper so that we won't repeat the same questions at the FC? Another question. paragraph 11, land acquisition or land resumption for the remaining pedestrian connectivity facilities near Pt2 Estate, Sammaoping South Estate, and Sammaoping Estate. More time is required to sort out land issues such as potential land resumption or creation of easement. Can you elaborate on this? Well, the time is up. Please give a succinct response only, Mr. Lam. About other pedestrian connecting facilities, we are resolving some land issues. For example, part of the land falls within Pt2 Estate or Sammaoping Estate. As such, we need to work it out with other relevant departments on the issue of land. That is why, for the pedestrian facilities, we can only apply for funding with the FC after we have reached an agreement. Do you have a timetable? We'll try to be as quick as possible, because on land issues, we need more time to sort them out. We hope that the pedestrian facilities will be completed to tie in with the intake of the ARQ site in 2023-24. I believe that the government understands Mr. Chan's question, because the Anderson Road project is quite a large-scale development project that we have really rarely seen in recent years. So we may be focusing on the site and focusing on public, private housing, etc. But as I mentioned before, we need to consider the whole area instead of focusing on individual sites. Because if we consider an individual site, the ratio may not be the same every time. So about Mr. Ray Chan's question, I suggest that the supplementary paper be supplied after the meeting. This is really not something new, but I'd just like to remind members that we need to consider the layout of the whole area. Mr. Ho Kai Ming. It's true that we need to consider the planning of the whole area. But at the same time, I'm concerned about traffic, because traffic is always put to the back of the list when it comes to planning. You won't plan until population intake has begun in 2024. Well, anyway, we have discussed with members about a new road leading from Honghua Court to the site. We asked the OCs of Honghua Court and the estate, and if we take a look at the location, it is extremely close to Honghua Court. And there would be a noise barrier erected, but it will not be fully enclosed. It will only be halfly enclosed. And there is a vertical slope. We're concerned that noise will be reflected directly to the residents. We wonder whether you can have a fully enclosed noise barrier instead. Second point, you're going to proceed with road expansion. I am a member of that constituency. At that roundabout, which will not be expanded, a bus will often occupy all the lanes whenever it enters the roundabout. So if the roundabout itself is not expanded, you will still have traffic congestion. There is a slope behind the roundabout. I think it should be expanded as well. Third point about Shui Ping Estate, there will be a lift leading to Hill Ming Street. But we understand that because of Shui Ping North Estate's objection, in the end, it will not lead to Shui Ping Road. Now, I understand that you're trying to identify a new location to build the lift leading all the way down. It's not mentioned in the paper, but I understand that you have some preliminary idea already. I want to know when you apply for funding. If you only have a lift that leads to halfway down, then it won't be good enough. 3 questions. About the issue at the district level, I will defer to Mr. Leung, the Deputy Project Manager, to take your question. About the 3 questions about Honghua Court, about noise and the noise barrier, in terms of the design, it is in line with the requirements of the EIA. But we understand the concern of residents in Honghua Court. We have been talking to the OCs and the residents in Honghua Court and listening to their concerns. For example, during the constructions, I'm not just talking about the construction period. For example, whether we can have noise mitigation measures during construction. Chairman, he doesn't understand my question. It's not just about the construction period. It is not a fully enclosed noise barrier. There is a steep slope nearby, and noise should be reflected to residents. My question was very clear. I asked about a fully enclosed noise barrier. The design is in line with the relevant requirements in the EIA. So, how many decibels would be reduced? The benchmark is less than 70 decibels. So even without using a fully enclosed noise barrier, it will be less than 70%. After erecting the noise barrier, it will be less than 70%. Let me also take the other 2 questions about the roundabout near Pt2 path, Pt2 Road. We have changed the alignment of the roundabout in order to improve traffic. About Shui Ping North Estate, Mr. Ho also understands that we are in the process of discussing with Shui Ping North Estate. They do have reservations about the proposed pedestrian connectivity facility. Perhaps Mr. Ho can further discuss with the OC of Shui Ping North Estate, and if they're willing, we'll be happy to discuss with them as well. Dr. K.K. Kwok, we must support the project, but I have a number of questions. First, on public-private mix, I think for the administration's reply, it is in fact the other way round. We have 280,000 applicants on the PRH waiting list. It is such a huge number. You regard the 1,000 starter homes as public housing, but in fact this is not true. The majority of applicants are waiting for public rental housing. They may not have the conditions, have the means to buy their own homes. Whether or not the government introduces starter home scheme or the GSH flats, they need affordable housing.
So what I don't want to see is further slashing of the PRH flats. Well, you have not made it clear. Well, you might, in the end, turn all the units into HOS flats. That's what we don't want to see, because for most people in Kowloon East, actually, basically, those flats have been sold by the developers, but then how many Hong Kong people can afford it? For the young people, actually, it's just pipe dream. So you should not be focusing on home purchasing or home ownership. I think Carrie Lam is rather naive on this. The second part is, well, for $2.6 billion is not a small sum, but then apparently much of it will be used to help the private developers to form their sites. So if indeed private developers will be taking up the lion's share of the sites, then at least some infrastructure or facilities should have been built by them. So would it be inappropriate use of public money to help the private developers? That's the second question. And also on the escalators, some $67 million will be spent on it. Well, last time when we discussed escalators, in fact, the prices have gone up rather exorbitantly. So in this particular case, when it comes to government standards, is it higher than expected or what? And if so, why? 3 questions. Ms. Ho. Thank you, Chairman. Well, in answer to your question, well, at present for the Anderson Road quarry, public to private would be 2 to 8. But then if you look at it from a wider perspective, right next to it, we have already got 2 housing estates. All of them are PRH flats. So together we're talking about some 17,000 units. With regard to the public to private housing ratio, from the 2 to 8 at the ARQ, that would be reverted to 7 to 3. And if you look at Sassoon and Ping estate, well, for the 1,000 units here, please do not dilute it so that the 2 to 8 cannot be achieved. Well, for the 1,000 starter homes, well, at the site that has been planned for it, well, initially we plan to build the 1,000 units as private units. Why are you not increasing the ratio for PRH flats? So even if you buy HOS flats, you don't have that available, because for Anderson Road quarry, well, for those who are eligible for HOS flats, actually the subscription rate is several dozen times over the number of flats available. Well, in planning for flats, we try to strike a balance. We understand that for PRH flats, the waiting time is getting longer and longer, and the queue is also getting longer and longer. And yet at the same time, we can also see that there are people from the lower rung of society who would like to purchase their own homes. That's why we try to strike a balance in planning for this. Well, for the technical issues, please be brief and concise, because we have overrun on time already. Yes, well, for the $2.6 billion, most of that would be on civil engineering projects and near Cheung Kwan O Road and also Clearwater Bay Road. We are actually doing some infrastructure works, and also for some open space and sitting out area for public use. And the lawmaker just talk about Po Yuk Lane. Well, with regard to the cost for the escalator, well, we have made reference from the tendering prices that we got recently, and the budget is in line with the estimates for escalators these days. Yes, Mr. Orr, 4 minutes. I agree that this is a major project, and we can see that this project will provide a lot of challenges and opportunities to Kwun Tong, and as a member from that constituency, I can see that with the proposal raised by the administration, well, is upgrading of part of it to Cat A, and when I look at those details from Para A to E, I do have a lot of questions. Well, with regard to noise barriers, well, you said that you would not be able to build full covers, and you can only build half covers. So what are the technical difficulties in building full barriers? And also for Lin Tek Road and Pick 1 Road, every day they are very congested, and you also talk about improving the roundabout. Well, you said that it's been touched up. What is that? Earlier on at the development panel meeting, I already asked similar questions, but then in your supplementary paper, you're completely silent on that. So can you give us more details? And also, your traffic impact assessment that was on the 18th of April 2017 or 2012. So it's already 2017. So have you done any further assessment? That is from the Anderson Road quarry. What is the implication? Well, you said that 70% would be from Poland Road to Cheung Kwan O Road, and 30% would be coming down from Clearwater Bay Road. In fact, according to our assessment, is far from being true, because most vehicles would be from Poland Road to Changkano Road, and Changkano Road would be very congested. But then you also said that there would be this Changkano South Tunnel, which will help solve all the problems. And even without delay, it can only be commissioned in 2021. So during the next 4 years, what you're proposing will not be able to solve the day-in, day-out traffic congestion problem. So I'd like to know, for these packages or traffic improvement measures, to what extent will you be able to solve the problem, and have you been able to move with time so that after April 2014, have you done anything to catch up with the situation? And also, well, including Sai Kung and Kwun Tong, they have repeatedly talked about the traffic issues, and yet I do not see any details here to respond to the requests by the District Council. So can you tell us here, that is with regard to the measures proposed by the District Councils, how are you going to respond to them? Yes, Director. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Oh, for the questions that you asked. You talk about the noise barriers. In fact, in designing for the noise barriers, we have actually done some simulation models. We have also looked at the effectiveness of the noise barriers, and also the density of traffic, and also the surrounding environment. So we have done a detailed study before coming up with this proposed design. So in terms of cost effectiveness, there is no need for us to build a full cover before we can achieve the effect. It has to do with cost effectiveness. And Mr. O also referred to Piklam Road. That is the roundabout. In fact, it's a relatively small roundabout, and in the surrounding area is rather narrow and congested. So in the plan, we try to move the roundabout a bit further away, and we'll also be cutting the slopes so that the surrounding environment would allow for future traffic. So that's been taken into account already. And Mr. O also talked about the TIA. Well, that was done in 2014. In fact, it's just a snapshot in 2014. In fact, whatever we have planned for that by 2026, 2030, or they have been set out, and they have been put into this traffic simulation program so that we can do a projection as to future traffic flow, and then we came up with the 70 to 30 distribution. And for the TIA, we can release the details to members so you can also take a look. And if necessary, we'll be more than happy to explain to lawmakers as to the details of the TIA. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 more members asking for the first time, and one also will ask for the second time. So we'll extend the meeting until 10:45. If we are able to deal with them, then we will deal with this item today, or else we will have to continue next time. So is it okay if I extend the meeting until 10:45? So Ms. Claudia Mo, first time, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. From what I've heard, is kind of ironic, because you're talking about Anderson Road Quarry site. You're going to develop it, and yet, from what we have heard, with regard to the public-private residential units ratio, it can be as low as 2 to 8. So I'm kind of worried, and yet the administration said that you don't need to worry, because you have to take into account on-tet estate and on-tie estate. In fact, there will be more than 10,000 units, and as a result of that, the ratio will be reverted to 7 to 3 in terms of public-private ratio. Well, very often the administration would like us to be more focused. When we discussed other issues, you would say that, from the macroscopic perspective, that's not right. Well, okay, I think it's kind of ironic when you ask us to do that. So you can see that the ratio for private units would be higher. But then we have close to 300,000 people on the waiting list for PRH. So it's quite a long queue. And when it comes to cost control, you said that you'll be controlling that very effectively. You'd be reducing CEDD works, you would also be doing the alignment, you would also have a streamlined design, and even on construction materials to be used. I understand that the lowest bid would always win the contract when it comes to tendering. But then when we try to ask for further details for the noise barriers, you talk about cost effectiveness. So are you very worried about cost overrun? Of course, I share that concern. So are you promising that the blueprint that you're putting before us will mean that for the entire project costing more than $2.6 billion, there will be no cost overrun whatsoever? So is that your guarantee? Director or anyone else? Well, I've already answered the first question many times. You will have to provide supplementary paper after the meeting. Well, the first point is not a question, so it's a criticism. Yes, I can see that. I think he has already answered the question. So he'll be supplying a supplementary information paper after the meeting, because initially, concerning the development at Anderson Road, they had an initial overall plan, but then when it comes to this specific site, the ratio will be somewhat different. So the first question has been asked already. I've already asked them to provide a supplementary paper so that we would understand the overall planning situation for the area. Next, can you supplement, Director? Well, when it comes to cost estimate for any project, we will first do the design. We will have to be sure that the design will be able to achieve our objective, and of course we will also have to meet legal requirements, and then we will consider the risks before we calculate the budget. For the $2.6 billion estimate, we believe that it should be able to cover the cost for the project, because generally speaking, for such projects, we're going to complete it in around 2023, and the chances of cost overrun should not be high. Well, I still have time. I'd like to ask this. All right, for traffic management, you said that by 2026 everything will work out fine, because for the traffic flow, when compared to the existing situation, there will be improvement. But then this is 2017. You're talking about 9 years down the road. And of course, I know that you have the Changuano South Tunnel, and there are a number of improvement projects in the pipeline. But then in the meantime, are you confident that it will not be overburdened? Because just now we also talk about the roundabout is quite appalling. Yes, Director? Well, generally speaking, when we do the TIA, we have to do some projections. We will have to project into the next 10 or 8 years. So we will have to be sure that there will be no problem for the next 8 to 10 years. And in the planning cycle, we have to bear in mind the projects that will be implemented and when such infrastructure projects can be commissioned. So we will have to assess as a whole.
So the accuracy may be reduced, and we need to strike a balance. Now the intake is 2024. We think that 2026 would be the optimal balance. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. About traffic impact assessment for on-tie estates. Now that population intake has taken place, we already have traffic congestion. On this point, I want to know whether you have compared the existing situation with your assessment, whether there is any discrepancy. For Clearwater Bay, New Clearwater Bay Road, traffic congestion started early in the morning, leading all the way to Shunli Estate. So I want to know whether you have compared that with the TIA and to find remedy to address the serious situation facing us. Let us bear in mind that population intake is only 60% for on-tie estate, at the moment. Another question in the paper. Regarding points A to C, which are mitigation measures amounting to some $300 million or $390 million for mitigating the impact on noise and the environment. Can you give us a breakdown? That includes, for example, noise barrier. And what's the proportion? Can you give us a breakdown? If we just look at this sentence, we won't understand that it actually takes up 1/3 of the total cost of this road improvement works project. Thank you for your question. Normally, when we prepare TIA, say for the intake in 2024, we may have an objective to say 2026, and for the impact brought about by population intake in 2016-17 in the surrounding estates, we haven't included that in the TIA. But for on-Tat estate, we have included the number of households and the projected population intake in the assessment. And then we monitor the situation. And we do have short-term measures. Mr. Leung can respond to that in a moment. About paragraph 13 of the paper on the $390 million of mitigation measures, we will provide you with some figures. By environmental mitigation measures, we mean some on-site measures, and the majority of the measures means noise barriers. Perhaps after the meeting, I can give you some details, a breakdown of these mitigation measures. Yes, please do give us more information after the meeting. Mr. Leung, be succinct, please. For short-term measures, the Transport Department has implemented management and control measures. We adjusted the sequencing of traffic lights, etc. About the ARQ site at Onsao Road Junction and Clearwater Bay Road near Shunlei Estate, at that junction, we also strive to complete it as soon as possible. I'm sorry, Chairman, because traffic congestion along New Clearwater Bay Road has existed. You talk about improving the new junction. It doesn't help ease the traffic congestion there. My question is whether you have revisited your TIA to see whether the assessment is a reflection of the real situation, to see if there is any discrepancy. I see that this is a concern of a number of members. Please supplement the information in writing afterwards. I don't think we're able to go through all the details orally here. Mr. Eddie Ju, first round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. It won't be long. First, I think that this is similar to what we had in 2016 when we examined the proposal of Area 9 typo. Very often it's about traffic. We talk about traffic improvement measures nearby, but for typo we have traffic congestion all the way to Sha Tin. And in Kwun Tong, the traffic congestion is a result of the congestion from a number of trunk roads. Even if you dish out $1.1 billion to improve the roads nearby, well, just now the director said that will be given the TIA. I want to know whether it will be available within this week so that we can all read it ourselves, and then Mr. Wu Chiwan perhaps can read the TIA and find the answer to his own question. What is your assessment on traffic? And then at the Finance Committee, we can discuss further with you the issue of traffic. Second, I think the administration should also understand why we would like you to adjust the mix of 2 to 8. Frankly, when we read the news, we see that in terms of housing supply, we do meet the private housing target, but not the public housing target. For on-Tat estates, you don't have to cite the figures because they have been completed. They have met the target. So when we talk about the 200,000 public rental housing target in the coming few years, we need to check whether you are meeting the target. Under such circumstances, when every year we're able to meet the private housing target of 19 or 20,000, then more resources should be reallocated to public housing to show the public that the government is committed to catching up with the target. Even if you ask us to look at the vicinity of ARQ site and that the mix is already an optimal one, we take a broader perspective and find that public housing target is still not met. So I'm going to object to this item, but please give us the TIA within this week. We'll do our best. All right, if we have the TIA, we can have more specific information on the traffic improvement measures. If we want to deal with this item today, we still have 2 members waiting to ask questions, but please don't use up all the 3 minutes, or it will be left till the next meeting. Well, even if you ask for the 3rd or 4th time, you may not be able to deal with it. Well, as a directly elected member, that's all right. That's my suggestion. If you want to use up all your 3 minutes, so be it. I won't stop you. You can have as many rounds as you want. I want to tell you that this meeting will be adjourned at 10:45, and if we can't deal with that, we need to adjourn this item to the next meeting as well. The papers will be provided after the meeting. I'm not suggesting that the papers will be provided at the Finance Committee only. Second round, 3 minutes, Mr. Ho Kai-ming. Chairman, just now Mr. Leung gave us a reply. We think that this is not realistic. Right at the ward office as a district councillor, I understand the road is just next to me. I don't accept your answer. For Hong Wah Court, well, the closest distance is just several meters from the noise barrier. If you say that this is out of cost effectiveness and that no noise barrier can be built there, I want to know the difference between a fully enclosed and halfly enclosed noise barrier and the distribution of noise. Don't tell us 70 decibels, that's all. If it's 70 decibels, you won't be able to sleep at night. It's unreasonable. For the roundabout, you said that it will be changed. I don't know why it will be changed this way, because you do not expect anyone to go past that junction. But you do have a safety island. Have you consulted the local community? As part of the local community, I have never been consulted. My ward office never received any invitation for consultation. No one should use that roundabout, but if you add a safety island, you're suggesting that the pedestrians could also use the roundabout. But if that is the case, by how much would traffic flow be reduced? Perhaps I will reply to Mr. Ho in writing after the meeting, because I don't have the information at hand about the roundabout at Pik Wan Road. We have the roundabout as well as some crossing facilities. It serves the function of helping traffic merge near the roundabout. As for the yellow part in the picture, near the slope there is a path, and that is the extension of the pavement. Mr. Ho asked about whether people would be crossing the road there, because you did not expect anyone to cross the road there. I understand that signage may be necessary. My question is, have you consulted the local community how it should be done? I haven't heard of any consultation. A while ago, I did discuss with Mr. Lee this project. After giving you our views, have you further consulted the local community? I'll defer to Mr. Leung to answer your question very briefly. About exchanging views with district councillors or the local community, I'll be happy to approach Mr. Ho after the meeting, and we can have exchanges at the district liaison group. Less than 3 minutes, Mr. Wilson All. Unless you're happy to use just 2 minutes, we'll need to wait for next time. I'm also a district councillor of the constituency. I am also but unfortunately, the government did not consult me. I need to declare this at first. Second point, I hope the government can explain to me this. About public consultation. You need to provide supplementary information on traffic matters. I won't blame you. But have you conducted any consultation? How was it done? What was the response? Another point. District councillors have been giving you so many views. What was your response? I'll give you time to respond to that. 1 minute. First, on traffic in 2015, about the road improvement measures, we consulted the relevant district councils, followed by a gazettal process, and earlier we also consulted the electrical panel and Mr. Oh. We have the district liaison group, and we'll be happy to exchange views with you, Mr. Oh. And after the meeting, we can also approach this member. I think he is beating the bush, and he is the human recorder. I find myself unable to support this project because you haven't told us. Have you conducted any consultation? You have not addressed the concerns of the district councils. I'll give you time to reply, but don't repeat your answers. Well, he's asking whether you have done any consultation before the meeting, not after the meeting, what you will do. Mr. Leung. Perhaps I can answer more specifically. Mr. Oh asked whether we can have 2-lane carriageway in Sumoping Road. In fact, we included his idea so that the project can commence in 2018. Well, for the items approved today, we expect to submit the item to December in December. Thank you for attending today's meeting. Meeting is adjourned.